I'm here today with Jane Ziegelman, author of 97 Orchard, An Edible History of Five Immigrant Families in One New York Tenement, and most recently of A Square Meal, A Culinary History of the Great Depression. Jane, how are you?
I'm doing okay, given what we've got. I'm here, I'm in Brooklyn with my two sons, big sons, and my husband and my cat. And we're all being nice to each other. So I'm happy for that.
Being nice is especially important these days.
Oh, yeah, it's really important.
So it sounds like you have a lot of people to feed. What have you been cooking these days, Jane?
I've been kind of all over the map. When this all started, my sense of reality was so, everything changed so quickly. I wanted to find foods that would kind of ground me. So I went to Joy of Cooking, and I made a meatloaf. And real American meatloaf with ketchup and everything.
Yeah.
And it was really good. But since then, I've kind of branched out into much more experimental cooking. Partly because of the way we shop now, just as infrequently as possible, making use of things that are in the pantry. Improvising, punting, all that kind of stuff. And I've had some failures and I've had some successes.
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
It's so interesting how we go to these places of comfort, and it seems like we're all in a way going back to basics. And I love that you went to the Way of Cooking, which is such a classic
What's
text.
funny is that a meatloaf is not my comfort food, but I know it's somebody's comfort food.
Right.
And I sort of it was a kind of ideal. And it was also the Joy of Cooking was also a book published during the Great Depression, and we're in this kind of parallel crisis. So it all kind of made sense to me.
Yeah. So Jane, you're a part of our team for A Seat at the Table. You give a couple of wonderful lectures, and you talk a lot about resourcefulness in the tenement kitchen. And along the lines of what you were saying about shopping and so forth, I'm wondering, what do you think, are there lessons that we can take from tenement cooks that are applicable today?
Oh my gosh, yes. Resourcefulness is, I think, the word of the day in a lot of ways. I mean, both for economic reasons and for logistical reasons. We have to learn to make do with what we've got in a way that maybe we hadn't before. I mean, who ever heard of going to the supermarket and not having flour? I never heard of such a thing.
Right.
So we got a bag of buckwheat flour, and me and Andy, my husband, started doing all kinds of buckwheat flour experiments. Resourcefulness is a tremendous source of creativity, and this is a time to get creative, but also to maybe not always have what we want right away, to defer certain pleasures because we kind of have to. And I think that's something that tenement cooks were also very good at.
What would you say is the most unusual? Because buckwheat flour sounds like it's not totally typical when you want your white flour, but it's not. You've talked about some pretty unusual ingredients that tenement cooks use. What's the most unusual recipe or ingredients you've found in your research?
Oh, okay. Well, you may know this, but I really love reading old cookbooks. And one of my favorite cookbooks is actually in your YIVO collection. It's the Frischwasser, the Regina Frischwasser book. It's a 1941 cookbook that was put out by The Forward.
Right.
And what's really fun about it is seeing how women trained in the immigrant cooking tradition with the immigrant mindset
Mm.
or the Eastern European approach to cooking integrated American ingredients into their foods.
Right.
And one of the foods that they did a lot of really fun things with is spaghetti, which for them was an American food.
Right.
And there's a recipe in the Frischwasser book that's essentially spaghetti with matzo balls, which is just, she didn't want to make a meatball. Maybe she wanted it to be a dairy meal, a vegetarian meal. So she made a matzo ball. It's not that different. There are also kugels with spaghetti, which they call spaghetti puddings. So I think the ingredients aren't strange, but the usages are all kind of unfamiliar and fun, and they let you kind of see the mind of the cook as she's thinking things out.
I think spaghetti is a pretty comforting food as well.
That's true.
So you can always have spaghetti. In your most recent book with Andy Coe, you talk about the Great Depression and how it transformed American eating habits. And I'm curious what you think about, whether or not we're going through similar transformations or will be going through similar transformations based on what we're experiencing today and what that might look like.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the dishes that came out of the Great Depression have not survived, except sort of as oddities, like, a cake made with mayonnaise instead of eggs. I can't think of another example, but there are other sort of Depression dishes that are, they're oddities, one-offs. The real foods of the Great Depression, things like lima bean loaf and all kinds of dishes under white sauce. White sauce was considered a really healthy food because it was a way to get milk into the diet, and milk was considered a very important source of inexpensive nourishment. Those dishes haven't survived either. But what has survived is a kind of way of looking at food. And more specifically, it's the idea of looking at food through the lens of science and understanding the different parts of the plate and different nutritional roles played by different foods and how important it is to get all the nutrients to keep your body working in healthy order. And I believe that that's the big legacy of the Great Depression in terms of our American eating habits. We're kind of early in this, and I don't know how it's going to change us in the long term, but I do think that we are going to become better cooks. Americans are going to become better cooks. I've never cooked so much in my life, and everyone I know is saying that. And we're going to really not just become good recipe followers, which is important and great, but I think we're going to understand more about how food works because we have to do these substitutions. That's part, you have to know what a food is doing in a recipe to be able to substitute it. So, I mean, it's sort of from the, silver lining department. But I do think that we're learning a lot about cooking, and I think that's great.
I don't know have you seen all this discussion recently about the trending of, pictures of people growing scallions in water by their windowsill?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Kind of throwback.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, there's, this feeling that we want to be self-reliant, and people, depression era people planting their gardens so they would have their own, food sources there. And we are doing similar things now.
So what would you hope to see in terms of developments in Jewish food, in American eating? You talked about us cooking more. Hopefully we become better cooks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other things like that you would hope to see in the months ahead, but also well into the future?
I guess I hope we'll become a little less reliant on meats that are despite my meatloaf, and that are so environmentally troubling.
Yeah.
And although if we do eat meat, and I'm not a vegetarian, if we do eat meat, and this is something that Jewish cooks can teach us, to eat every part of the animal.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of all the extremities and all the weird bits and internal things. So I would love, in this sort of Ashkenazi food renaissance that's taking place right now,
Sure.
if that could be part of it. It hasn't happened yet, but that might be, now we're home picklers, we're doing other things. I would like to see us start eating organ meat.
This is going to be a very controversial topic, Jane. People deciding whether or not they're going to delve into organ meats.
What's the controversy?
We'll see.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Those are my favorite parts. Maybe it's sort of a little devilish streak in me, but I really, really do enjoy like a gizzard,
right?
For example, and of course chocolate burr, and on and on.
So we're going back where it's old, but it's also new, nose to tail.
Oh yeah,
Jewish cooking.
Jews were
animal.
excellent nose to tail eaters, and it's now so environmentally relevant. I really hope that comes roaring back.
Well, Jane, I'm so glad we were able to chat a little bit about this. Your lectures are wonderful in the course. You talk about organ meats, so people who want to learn more about that can hear more from you. And at the table, if they haven't already, they can sign up at yiva.org/food. I hope you continue to make delicious recipes from your buckwheat flour and more. And hope to chat with you again soon.
That's great, Ben. Thank you so much.